Welcome to Reggie's Rabbit Hole, folks. Today, I'm going to be sharing a story that a friend of mine shared with me not too long ago. In my opinion, it was one of the more spooky stories I had heard in a very long time, so I decided I wanted to share it with you. Now, I can't prove whether this story is true or not, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. And personally, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I never really knew Jack to tell too many stories. He was a pretty straightforward guy, but he was telling me about the time that he had been tasked with the job to destroy a large 2-story house out in the middle of nowhere. And according to him, that first day he pulled up, he thought it was pretty spooky. Apparently, a tornado had come through a few years back and destroyed half of the house. Most of the basement still looked like it was intact, but part of the house was destroyed. The house itself was pretty much in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farmland and trees, nestled a little bit farther off of the main road. According to the stories, the family that had lived there had been one of the biggest cattle farmers in southern Missouri. However, they were also pretty elusive. They didn't talk to too many people, and you didn't really even see them in town too much unless they had to go in and get supplies. They pretty much kept to themselves. It seems that after the tornado hit, they just grabbed their insurance money and got out of town. Fast forward to 2023. Somebody decided to go ahead and buy the property. Their first plan was to demolish what was left of the house and the old barn and rebuild. That's where Jack comes in. Jack worked for a crew that did this type of thing. Went in, unhooked all the gas lines, water lines, septic tanks, and whatever else, so that they could basically come in and just bulldoze everything down, clear it out, act like nothing was ever there, and rebuild again. The way Jack tells the story, the first couple days were pretty boring, really. They just cleared out a lot of debris out and around the house, making sure that they could get the bulldozer and everything else they needed in there for the final demolition. That is, until one day, a couple of the other crew members had to take off and go help with an emergency that had happened at another job site down the road a little ways. This also happened to be the day that they were starting to go inside and start pulling things out of the house. When he had first walked in, he did notice a smell, but he really didn't think anything of it. He just assumed it was some animal that had gotten in there and couldn't find its way out and had passed away. Other than that, seemed pretty normal. He got to the basement door. His job that day was to go downstairs, make sure there weren't any gas lines hooked up or any equipment that might need to be pulled out of there. So as he started heading down the creaky steps, the smell got a little bit stronger. He again assumed this must be where this animal has come in here and passed away. As he got farther into the basement, he realized that pretty much 3/4 of the basement was still there. Just a little corner missing where you had a little sunlight coming in from the top. He assumed right there that's where that animal has come in here, crawled into that hole, got in here, got stuck, passed away. So, mystery solved, right? So as he starts working his way a little farther down into the basement, he sees there's a little kitchen set up, looks like a couple bedrooms. As he's walking further back towards the back, he notices a little door. It's much shorter than the other ones. Just thinking maybe it's some sort of crawl space or something. As he grabbed the door handle, assuming that it was going to open up with no problem, he realized it was locked. This was a little bit curious. At some point in time, they were really going to have to go through that door just to make sure there wasn't anything in there that may cause a problem when they demolish the place. And of course, who knows? Possibly somebody living down there, knowing it's an abandoned house. Either way, it had him a little puzzled, and he started looking around for a key. He went in through the kitchen, opened up a few of the drawers. Again, eerily, everything downstairs seemed to be in place as if nothing had ever happened. as if some huge tornado hadn't come through and basically wiped out half of the house. After looking through a few drawers and a couple cabinets and not seeing any kind of a key, he decided to go ahead and move on, start clearing out the rooms that he could clear out. Nothing really unusual. Again, everything looked as if it might have been before the tornado had happened. Made his way in, started cleaning out a couple bedrooms that the beds were made, clothes were hung up. It was just odd that these folks had just taken off and left everything. Understandably, a tornado came through, but most of that stuff downstairs looked like it hadn't even been bothered at all by the storm. Yet here it was, still sitting there, as if nothing had ever happened. As him and another guy finished up cleaning up a couple of the bedrooms and one of the bathrooms, it was time to call it a day. They'd both walked upstairs, went back outside, and started getting in their trucks when Jack realized he must have sat his phone down somewhere because it wasn't in his pocket. So he makes his way back into the house, back down into the basement. He admitted it was a little hurly. He was ready to get in there, get his phone, and get out. Still thought the place was a little bit spooky. As he found his phone laying on the kitchen counter there, he got it, picked it up, put it in his pocket, and as he was walking out, he could have swore he heard a knock coming from that small door back in the corner. He stopped for a minute and listened. Didn't hear it again. Then started heading out up the steps as quickly as possible. That's when he said he was pretty sure that something had actually banged on that door, and it scared him way too much, and he just took off, ran out to the truck, got in, and didn't say anything to his coworker. Now at this point in time, Jack had been staying in town for close to a week in a little hotel right across from a diner. This town was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, not very many people there, and the next big town was probably 50 miles away. So he had gone to the same diner for breakfast and dinner and decided on this night he was going to ask a few questions, see if anybody knew about that old abandoned house out in the middle of nowhere. To Jack's surprise, when he asked his waitress that he had had for the last few days, her eyes kind of lit up, a little bit of excitement and even maybe a little bit of curiosity. She told Jack to meet her back here in the lobby after she got off of work, and she would tell him what she knew. Jack decided to come on back after her shift was over and sat down and talked with her a little bit. According to her, the family was very elusive and did not come to town very often. They would eat in the diner every now and then, but usually it was the husband, the wife, and the kid. The rumor was that there was also the father that lived with them, and he was an older man who was starting to get dementia and didn't really know where he was at most of the time, so he normally stayed at the house. However, as many recall, they don't remember seeing the old man when the family left town after the tornado had hit the house, and nobody was quite sure what had ever happened to him. At this point, it was starting to get late, and Jack decided to go back to his hotel room and unpack all the information he had received from the waitress. He wasn't sure really what to think about it. He just knew that surely that old man wasn't still in that house living in that little room. This had been almost 5 years since the tornado. What he knew for sure was the next day was the day he was going to have to open up that locked door, find out exactly what was going on. It was the last room they needed to clear out before they could continue and bulldoze down the rest of the house. He was hoping that the entire crew would be there again. That way, if somebody was living in that room because it was an abandoned house and they came running out, he would at least have some backup. Unfortunately, when he arrived at work in the morning, he realized it was just him and the fella he had been working with the last couple of days. So he let him know right away, I'm going to kick in this door. Have my back in case somebody comes running out. His coworker laughed a little bit, but his coworker also looked like maybe he had been thinking about it too. Was there something in that room? Why was it locked? Jack had decided it was time to find out, so he went ahead and he kicked open the door. The smell he had smelled the day before was overwhelming. It was hard to breathe. It was very dark in the room, but the stench was terrible. It looked like there was a bed inside, dishes on the floor, yet clothing put away nice and neat. As relieved as Jack was that somebody did not come running out at him as he kicked in the door with this overwhelming stench and what looked like something underneath the bed, Jack was worried that someone might no longer be among the living inside that room. As he moves in a little bit closer, it becomes a little more clear. What looks like a skeleton laying on the floor with some ragged clothes, face down, in between the bed and the wall. Jack kind of jumped and then took back off, running back out of the basement and back outside. Jack immediately grabbed his cell phone and called 911, letting the cops know the situation and that they needed to get out there as quick as possible. Of course, at this point, he was very nervous, very excited, and wasn't making a whole lot of sense. On the one hand, he had just found a deceased body in a room that he was worried about the night before after hearing bangs come out of it. This was really kind of mind-boggling. Surely that wasn't him that knocked on the door yesterday. As he got off the phone with the police, he talked to his coworker a little bit, making sure they took some sort of documentation to let everybody know that they hadn't gone into that room until that day and had just found the body that was lying on the floor. Once the police arrived, Jack and his coworker were pulled over to the side and asked questions by the police and detectives. They told them the story, even had a little bit of documentation from some pictures and videos they had taken the day before. The police told them that they would be in touch and that they had nothing to worry about. There had always been some rumors about this house, and now some of them had been cleared up. Well, this left Jack with more questions than answers. So he went back to the hotel room, went next door to the diner, and had another conversation with the waitress to see if maybe she knew a little bit more. According to the waitress, she had actually talked to a friend of hers about the house after they had the conversation the night before. Her friend actually knew the sister of the family that lived in the house, and according to the sister, the father of the family that lived there was getting old, having dementia, and hard to take care of. So every now and then they'd put him in the back room when they had company over. Then the rumors really started swirling after everybody found out that the body that was found in the house was actually the old man. And again, nobody ever remembered the family taking the old man with them when they left town after the tornado. Many wondered if the family thought that the tornado was going to completely take out the entire house, so they just threw him in that room, hoping it'd look like a casualty of war. Why else would they run out of town immediately afterwards with no sign of the man in sight? The questions only became more questions. Jack never got a definitive answer. The job was put on hold. He was sent to another job much farther away. This wasn't a town that he came to all the time, but he'll always think about it and remember the time he found some mysterious skeleton in the basement of an old creepy house with more questions than answers. How did it happen? Why did it happen? I guess that we'll never know. Again, I don't know if this story is true, but it definitely made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you guys have any stories out there that you want to tell, please let me know. I'd be very interested in putting a story together for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.